Hi, this is May, Outreach and Education Specialist with Safe Embrace. And today we have
Bernice.
Berenise. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a mom of three. I have a girl and two boys. My girl is 10 years old. My two boys are 8 and 6,
Aw.
and a wife also.
What's the ages for your children? Today you're here to share a little bit about yourself when it comes to your personal story as well, right from your childhood,
Yeah.
growing up into adulthood. What would you like to share with us today?
I'm able to share, I think a little bit of everything. I think that's what molded me to be who I am now.
Well, let's start from your childhood then. What kind of a childhood did you have?
Traumatic, I would say. There was not a lot of laughter, I would say. Working with my therapist, actually, she has had me look through my childhood pictures, and so I did have my mom send me some photo albums, and one thing I noticed is there were not a lot of pictures of me laughing or smiling. I was always so serious in my pictures, which made me really sad, actually. I would say that like my first memory actually that I remember was of my dad was a big drinker and gambler actually when I was little, which is strange because as I got older, there was a period where my dad just stopped drinking and he was never gambling or anything like that. And so there was definitely a small period where he would gamble his whole paycheck away actually. But he came home one night and he had been drunk and gambled his whole paycheck. And my mom had us hide, my sister and I, it was just us both. And he walked in and I remember her saying, like, how am I going to feed the girls? And he started beating her, actually. And so I covered my sister's eyes and she covered her ears so she wouldn't see. I didn't want her to see anything. And he just picked my mom up. My mom was pretty petite, and he tied her to the Solo Flex. It was a like workout machine, and he just beat her actually. And then he kind of looked over and he saw me, and I had a doll that he had bought me, like a rag doll, and he grabbed me and he dragged me to the bathroom and he ripped my doll apart and he shoved my face in the toilet. And then he just left me there and ripped my doll apart. So that's probably one of the first things that he did. I have no idea why he did it or why me also.
And this was when you were a little girl?
Yeah, probably when I was 5, I would say.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you've experienced that from such a small age. And it didn't get any better, did it?
No, I've had, it's crazy, but I could not remember when I was learning my numbers. I couldn't remember the number 7. I would start counting and I would forget. And I had a dog collar put on me. And every time I would get to the number 7, if I wouldn't say it, I would get shocked until I would say it again. And so, I don't know, it just happened a lot.
Yeah. Well, how did that progress as a teenager? What about for your mom? Were you able to speak up as you got older for yourself and her?
No, she also was getting beat. And so it got to the point where we would have to leave we would have to go outside when she was getting beat. And so we could hear, I could hear in the house that she would get either thrown or I could hear him yelling at her. And so I think it was hard. I think a lot of times I would go back and think that she was a kid when she met him. She was 15. She was 17 years old when she had me. And so a big part of me, even today as a mom, thinks she also was in this fight also where she was trying to protect herself. And there was always times where he would work at night, I remember, or he would go on a trip when he would go visit his family in Mexico. And it was like a moment where we could breathe. I remember and we wouldn't do anything crazy, but we would have hungry men, those meals, because we always had meals from scratch, always, but we ate what my dad wanted. He ate first, he ate seconds if he wanted seconds, but he ate meals from scratch, what he wanted. And he needed dessert with every meal. And so, but we cleaned, we did the dishes, we cooked, you know, and so life kind of revolved around him. You know, if his cholesterol was high, we would have to eat differently until his cholesterol was low. And when I became a teenager, he started incorporating like cords, electrical cords, and then there's these bands that go into wood saw machines. He would bend them, and he would take us into his wood shop, and he would hit us. And his thing was, do not make a sound. He doesn't want people to hear or fall on the ground. And so I, to this day, like I would not cry, and I would not fall down to the ground. I would cry later when I'd be in my room by myself, but he would hit me until like he would draw blood from my leg or his arm would get tired. But my sister, below me, she would fall to the ground and she would start crying and he would stop. And so I never understood, you know, until I got older and he explained why. But his eyes would change. Like I remember thinking that he would turn into a different person. It's almost like he would black out. And to this day, like the look in his eyes, like scare me because he just wouldn't stop.
Is your father still in your life today?
No. And that's a decision that I made. He did message me I messaged him like a year ago because he had been talking to one of my sisters and said some really awful things to her and about me. And so I did send him, I asked for his number and I sent him a message just saying, you know, like move on and keep my name out. And he sent me the most vile message. And I think because I have not been spoken to like that for so long, you do forget, you know, that you've been spoken to like that. My husband, no one in my life speaks to me that way. And I was like in shock, you know. But then the next morning I woke up and I have always said that I want to write a book. And he, you know, said that I should write a book named I'm a Snake, I Have Venom or something like that. And, you know, he said I was the biggest mistake in his life, which I've always known how he feels about that, his family. I overheard his mom making a comment that the only reason he had to marry my mom was because of me, you know. And so I always felt like I was like a mistake, you know. And so, but the next morning I woke up and I was angry about those messages. But I also realized that he was calling me things that he called me 20 years ago, you know, and so those things weren't new, you know. And so I definitely felt like I messaged him and I said, he also told me that he has a trust and he's leaving me off of it, that I'm not getting anything. And so I messaged him and I said, you are calling me the same things you called me 20 years ago. And if you knew anything about my life, you would know that I'm none of those things. And I have succeeded on my own without you. And I don't need your money. I make my own, you know. But also you have to be the loneliest human being. You don't have your daughters. You don't know your grandbabies. And that has to be a miserable feeling for you. And I also told him, when you drop your trust, make sure that you get with your attorney so you write everything correctly, because you still can't write correctly. And so I felt good about saying that on my own. But at that point, I felt like I took that power and I gave myself that back. And I had the last word. He always likes to have the last word. And he probably thought he was going to have it. And I never heard back from him, to be honest with you. And I was glad. I remember being in shock when I got that message, you know. And obviously, I don't know what I was thinking sending him that, and think that he wasn't going to say something vile and mean. But he did say, you were a mistake, that our dog didn't like me growing up, because dogs can sense when people are bad people. And that's why the dog didn't like me, which is so crazy. Again, when I looked back at it, I was like, my gosh, you're saying the same things. You know, he called me a loser. He said that I'm a failure. And again, I told him, my gosh, if you knew anything about my life, you would never call me any of these things, because I'm nothing, none of these things, you know. And again, I told him, I said, I learned what like a real man is supposed to look like, and that's my husband, and you'll never like get it, you know. But again, I took that power and I gave it to myself, and so that felt so much better. But yeah, beatings with those ropes. And then the last time, when I was 12 years old, actually, we lived in a small town, and there was a goat that was getting beat by its owner. And it was the last day of school, and my sister and I had seen it. Well, I thought it would be a good idea to relieve the goat of its pain. And so we took it, and we owned some like mobile homes, and so that my dad was working on. And so I took the goat and put it in one of the houses. So the lady was calling, asking like, who took my goat? And I denied it over and over. And then my sister said, we took it, or she took it. And his punishment was I had to get on a pair of shorts, and we had gravel in our backyard. And so I had to get on my knees and hold the cinder block over my head. And I had to do circles around their yard on my knees for like, I don't know, until it got dark. And so my knees were destroyed from here to here. They just bled. And so I don't have a lot of skin on my knees. And so after he did that, he made me stand or like get on my knees on the like cobblestone of our fireplace so we can pray the rosary. And I think at that point I just could not like handle the pain anymore, because like it was all my skin was gone. And I remember like seeing like everything got fuzzy, and I passed out.
Oh my gosh.
And he thought I was lying, so he got the belt and went to go hit me because he thought I was making it up. Yeah. And so he went like kicked me and noticed that I didn't move, and my mom that's the one time my mom got in the middle of it, and she said she's not faking it. And then I woke up in the bath with cold water. But that was probably like between that and like the horsewhip. But when they were healing, it just was tight. Like the scab was from here to here. And it's just tight when you're walking. It got stuck on everything. But he wouldn't let me wear shorts anymore because he didn't want anybody to see him. His thing was always he would hit us from the waist down so nobody could see. So like for PE or anything like that, or gym, he would make us wear pants. So his thing was he'd always hit us behind the legs, where people wouldn't ever notice, but never anything noted, like never on the waist above. He'd hit my mom like that, but my mom would stay home with us, or my mom always say that she fell, or, I remember hearing that. And so the things in his workshop he would hit us with, or that knee thing, was probably like the absolute worst.
So no one could ever question what was happening? They never...
No, the cops came to my house one time, but CPS never came. And my friend's mom was a bus driver, and she had noticed one time, and she called the cops, and the cops came. And in front of my dad, they said, "Does your dad hit you?" And my sister and I said no. And he closed the door and took us back to his shop, and he hit us. And I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I can't say yes. You know what I mean? Like he's standing right there, and he said, "This will teach you not to talk anymore." And I was like, but we never had, CPS never came. And I think that was the hard part, is like, I do think some parents knew, but no one called them. But also we lived in a tiny town, and I don't know that CPS really comes out there, or maybe they do now, but they didn't back then. I had heard that the Fallon person would come out to like Round Mountain, but they didn't at that point. The last time he beat me was when I was 16, almost 17. And I wanted to go to a basketball game that was in Vegas, and he was leaving that weekend. It was President's Day weekend. He was leaving for Mexico. And so he wouldn't allow me to go anywhere that was on a team with boys, because his head's always in the gutter. For me, it was just like an opportunity to go. But he would let my sister and I play sports, but when we went out away, we would have to share one pair of shoes. We had the means to pay for the shoes, but he just made it really hard, so we wouldn't. And then he would give us like $20 for the weekend, and so her and I had to share meals as well. So we went to the buffet, and we would have to pay for one, and we would have to eat, both of us together, which I think back on it, and I think like how mortifying for like a high school kid. But again, we just wanted to leave the house, So anyway, I ended up leaving, going, which again, it is such a stupid thing to do for high school, like to go on a trip to Vegas to play basketball. But the coach ended up finding out that I hadn't told my parents. And so they called my mom, and my mom, like, she walked the line that my dad told her, and she didn't have to tell him, but she told him. And he, it was Valentine's Day. He got me in the kitchen, and my uncle had brought him back a horsewhip from Mexico. And he put me in the kitchen, and he got the horsewhip, and he started hitting me across my face. And like the first time he did it, it like burnt, but it was like this long, and the hide on the end was about this. And so when he would hit, it would like sting in the back, but the hide would hit in the back. But he said, you will never forget what this feels like. And so he hit me so much, it cut my eyebrow, split my eyebrow open, and my lip has a scar because he split me open. Then he took me into his room where they had like these long mirrors, and he put me in front of the room, in front of him, in front of the mirror. And he said, don't ever forget what you look like. And I have never forgotten, because I could barely see because my eye was shut. And he said, don't ever forget what I did to you. And then he left for his trip. And so my sister called her friend, and her mom was a teacher. And she said, I'm afraid my dad's gonna kill one of us next. Because the month before that, my dad had pinned her to the wall and had punched her in the stomach and left her at home for like 2 weeks while we went to Mexico. And he probably would have, like, I do think that if we would have stayed and she wouldn't have said anything, he probably would have killed one of us next, because he was getting very violent. And so her friend told her mom. And so her mom called the police, and my mom had this thing where she I don't know what she would do, but she'd put us in this bath, and but the top of my neck on the back was so sore because it was split open. And then she would put the stuff on my face, but I had never been hit on my face like that, like he had never done that ever. And I could not like see either. And so I went to school, and my mom like put makeup and stuff, and I wasn't as swollen as I had been. And so my mom had said, if anybody asks, just tell them that you fell, and I remember the things my mom would say, and I was always like my mom's like protector. And so I got to school, and I got called into the principal's office, and I was never in trouble. So I got put into this room by myself with all these other people, and they asked, what happened to me? And I said, oh, nothing. I was playing with my sisters. We have a bunk bed, and I hit my face, and they were kind of just staring at me. And then the cop put his hand on my right here, and he said, we have your sister next door, and we know what happened. But as he did that, he put his fingers right in the cut, and it hurt so bad, and I had to move away, and then I started crying. And he said, I need you to tell us what happened. And so they moved my sister over to where I was, and I was like, I don't want to get in trouble. And what's going to happen to my mom? He just wanted to know, and so we told him. And then my dad came back from Guadalajara. That's where he was at for I don't even know how long. My mom was angry at me. Angry. When we went home, my mom got called, and we went to the grocery store, and I remember being in the aisles and her turning away, and she said, we'll never forgive you for this. And I remember I was like, I didn't call, I wasn't me, But that guilt to feel that like you're tearing your family apart, And my sister and I got taken out of the house and placed with like another family, with Ramona Brown, and she was amazing. And I remember when we were there thinking like, is this what life's supposed to be like? Which is crazy, like to have like dinner and not feel like we didn't get to do homework. Like we had like his work that we needed to do, but we also needed good grades. We didn't get, the kids asked me the other day, what was your favorite story that you would get read to? But I didn't get tucked in. I didn't get read to, you know, like my life was not like that, you know, like I didn't have a safe space in my home. And so we got taken out, and my dad, when he landed in LA, he actually got arrested and brought back, and my mom bailed him out. He had to do these anger management classes, and we had to go to court. And this judge had asked me to come up, and he said, your dad said that this was an accident, that he didn't mean to do it, that he talks with his hands, which my dad does talk with his hands, and I knew that he did it on purpose. Like, he put me in front of that mirror and just stood there. Not only that, like, he had also, like, when I was like 12, my dad had like inappropriately like touched me, and so I hated his hands also on me. And he said, your dad said that he didn't do it on purpose. Do you believe him? I remember, like, in the pit of my stomach, I just missed my mom and my two other sisters, and I said, yeah, like, I do. And then he knew that my dad meant to. He knew that I was probably like lying. So he gave me he had me go all the way up, and he gave me this piece of paper. And back then, those cell phones were a cellular one, they were big. And he gave me his cell phone number, and he said, if that man ever puts his hands on you or any of your sisters or your mom, you call me. I don't care what time. And for me, I had won at that moment. Like, it was like our golden ticket. I knew that he could never put a hand on me ever again. And so I remember there were times where my dad was so angry. One time he was like right by me, and he grabbed these eggs and squished them, and he said, you think I can't hit you anymore? But he never did. He was mean, and he like threw things, but he never put another hand on us ever. Cele, my youngest sister, he never hit, and he never could. Like, he definitely treated her differently, but you know, when my mom and him divorced, he just completely like neglected her and left her. And so, you know, she still didn't have my dad, so she has different like traumas also, you know. But that was the last time he like beat me, you know. He is an awful human being, you know.
Wow. You have gone through the worst, the absolutely worst. And I really want to thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thanks.
To let everyone out there know that they're not alone, and to let little girls know you've been abused since you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
For over a year, for 12 years. And that's not okay. That's not okay. And you were abused verbally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah. I would actually be told that I wasn't the smart one, but I was the pretty one. And my sister was the smart one.
So from everything that you've experienced, Berenise, and what you know now, how are you raising your children differently from how you were raised?
To advocate for themselves always. I think obviously our household is very different. You know, my husband is a really big part of our kids' life. And I think when I chose, I would say, who I was going to marry, that was a really big part of how they treat me and how they speak to me, because I wanted to make sure that we raise our kids with them knowing that they're loved every day, and they're told every single day that they're loved and that their voice matters also. Our kids speak up a lot about how they feel. I want to know how they feel. I've had conversations with my mom actually before where she doesn't agree with a lot of it, which I don't do those things for my mom or anybody else to agree with. It's my home, but I am raising kids that are very aware of like what they feel, and you know, and also walk away knowing that they're safe and that they're loved, and they have no idea, like they have no fear of like being hurt either. Like, they're not afraid that their daddy's gonna put hands on them. I still like look at men's hands and there's like fear. I remember when I started dating my husband,
I looked at his hands because some hands scare me.
Bernice, if there was any advice that you can give to anyone going through what you've gone through as a child, as a teenager, what advice would you give them?
Find someone. Advocate for yourself. Speak up. There's always like help out there. Don't ever think that you're alone. I felt alone. The only other person that could ever understand me was my sister, who was going through it with me. We lived in a very small town. I feel like there's more resources now than there ever was before. And so I would say, pick up the phone and talk to somebody. If you can't, talk to somebody at school, in your neighborhood, whoever you can reach to, talk to them and say, I need help. Because I don't believe that there's people out there who won't help you. So speak up, advocate. And if you know somebody's going through it, advocate for them.
I think that if someone had spoken up earlier in your life, then so much could have been saved. So much abuse might have not happened. And I think it's so important to see the signs. And if your intuition speaks to you, if your gut tells you that someone is being hurt, trust it. And if you're too afraid to call the police, the law enforcement agency, we have advocacy organizations such as Safe Embrace. Please give us a call if you suspect any abuse.